Shh. The Great War of China. The Great War of China. The Great War of China.
19. The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from its enemies across the country's northern border. It is actually a series of long walls made of stone and earth. Some of the newer parts are built of brick. Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago. Over the centuries, new parts were built and some old parts were ruined and built again. The total length of the walls is nearly 7,000 kilometers. At one time, there were more than 1 million guards on the wall, too. There were hundreds of signal towers along the wall. The guards used these towers to communicate about the movement of enemies and to call for help when necessary. Now, much of the Great Wall has been destroyed by wind and weather, and people often take stones from the wall to repair their homes and other buildings. In recent years, the Chinese government has made laws to protect the walls. People are no longer allowed to take stone and earth from the walls. Some sections are well maintained, so that tourists can visit them. These sections are mainly north of Beijing or near other major tourist centers. Visitors can climb up onto the wall and walk along parts of it, but walking can be difficult. The wind can be strong, and there are some hard slopes on it. Money from tourists can be used to repair the wall, but an unfortunate result of the tourist trade is a great number of businesses in tourist areas. There are cable cars, shops, fast food restaurants, and crowded parking areas. Many people believe that because the wall is so long, it can be seen from the moon. That isn't true. The widest parts of the wall are only 9 meters, and it is mostly the same color as the earth that surrounds it. If you were ever on the moon and you wanted to see the Great Wall of China, you would have to use a telescope.
20.
Could you explain this timetable to me? I don't
The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from the enemies across the country's northern border. It is actually a series of long walls made of stone and earth. Some of the new parts are built of brick. Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago. Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago. Over the century, new parts were built and some old parts were ruined. New parts were built and some old parts. New parts were built and some old parts were ruined and built again. The total length of the wall is nearly 7,000 kilometers. At one time, there were more than 1 million guards on the wall, too. There were hundreds of signal towers along the wall. The guards used these towers to communicate about the movement enemies and to call for help when necessary. Now, much of the Great Wall has been destroyed by wind and weather, and people often take a stone from the wall to repair their homes and other buildings. In recent years, the Chinese government has made laws to protect the wall. People are no longer allowed to take stone and earth from the wall. Some sections are well maintained, so that tourists can visit them. These sections are mainly north of Beijing or near other major tourist centers. Visitors can climb up onto the wall and walk along parts of it, but walking can be difficult. The wind can be strong and there are some hard slope on it. Money from tourists can be used to repair the wall, but an unfortunate result of the tourist trade is a great number of business in tourist area. There are cable car, shops, fast food restaurants, and crowded parking areas. Many people believe that because the wall is so long it can be seen from the moon. That isn't true. The widest parts of the wall are only 9 meters, and it's mostly the same color as the earth that surrounds it. If you were ever on the moon and you wanted to see the Great Wall of China, you'd have to use a telescope. The Great Wall of China was built The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from the enemy.
19. The Great
The
Wall of
Great
China
Wall of China was built to defend China from the enemies across the country's northern border.
It is
It is
actually
actually a series of long walls
made of
made of
stone
stone
and
and earth.
Some of the newer
Some of the
parts
new
are
parts
built of
of
brick.
brick.
Parts of it were
Parts of
first
it were
built
first built more than 2,000 years ago.
Over the
Over the
centuries,
centuries,
new parts
new
were built,
parts
and
were
some
built and some
old
old
parts were
parts
ruined
were ruined
built
and
again.
built again.
The total
The
length
total
of the
length of
walls
the wall
is nearly
is nearly
7,000
7,000 kilometers.
At one
At one
there were
time,
more
there
than
were
1
more than
million
1 million
guards
guards on the wall, too.
There were
There
hundreds
were
of signal
hundreds of
towers
signal
along
towers
the wall.
along the wall.
The guards
The
used
guards
these
used these
towers to
towers to communicate about the movement of enemies
and to call for help when
when
necessary.
necessary.
Now, much of the
Much
Great
of the
Wall
Great
has
Wall
been
has been
destroyed by wind and weather, and people often take stones from the wall to repair their homes and other buildings. In recent years, the Chinese government has made laws to protect the walls. People are no longer allowed to take stone and earth from the walls. Some sections are well maintained so that tourists can visit them. These sections are mainly north of Beijing or near other major tourist centers. Visitors can climb up onto the wall and walk along parts of it, but walking can be difficult. The wind can be strong, and there are some hard slopes on it. Money from tourists can be used to repair the wall, but an unfortunate result of the tourist trade is a great number of businesses in tourist areas. There are cable cars, shops, fast food restaurants, and crowded parking areas. Many people believe that because the wall is so long, it can be seen from the moon. That isn't true. The widest parts of the wall are only 9 meters, and it is mostly the same color as the earth that surrounds it. If you were ever on the moon and you wanted to see the Great Wall of China, you would have to use a telescope.
Use a telescope.
20.
The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from its enemies across the country's northern border. It is actually a series of long walls made of stone and earth. Some of the new parts are built of bricks. Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago. Over the century, new parts were built and some old parts were ruined and built again. The total length of the wall is nearly 7,000 kilometers. At one time, there were more than 1 million guards on the wall. There were hundreds of signal towers among the wall. The guards used these towers to communicate about the movement of enemies and to call help when necessary. Now much of the Great Wall has been destroyed by wind and weather, and people often take stone from the wall to repair their homes and other buildings. In recent years, the Chinese government has made laws to protect the wall. People are no longer allowed to take stone from the earth and earth from the wall. Some sections are well maintained so that tourists can visit them. These, these sections are main, these sections are mainly north of Beijing, or near other major tourist centers. Visitors can climb up onto the wall and walk around parts of it, but walking can be difficult. The wind can be strong, and there was some hard slope on it. Money from tourists can be used to repair the wall, but an unfortunate result of the tourist trade is a great number of businesses in tourist area. There are cable cars, shops, fast food restaurants, and crowded parking areas. Many people believe that because the wall is so long, it can be seen from the moon. Seen from the moon. That isn't true. The widest part of the wall are only 9 meters, and it is mostly the same color as the earth that surrounds it. If you were ever on the moon, and you wanted to see the Great Wall of China, you would have to use a telescope.
The Great
The
Wall
Great
of
Wall
China
of
was
China
built
was
to
built to
defend
defend
China
China from the
enemies
enemy
across the
across the country's northern border.
It is
It
actually
is
a
actually a series of long
walls
walls
made of
made
stone
of stone
and earth.
and earth.
Some of the
Some
newer
of the new
parts are
parts
built
are
of brick.
built with
Parts of it were
parts of
first
the
built
parts
more
were
than
built more than
2,000 years
2,000 years
ago.
ago.
Over the
Over
centuries,
centuries,
new parts
new
were built,
parts were
and
built,
some
and
old
some
parts were
old
ruined
parts were
and
ruined
built
and
again.
built again.
The total
The
length
total
of the
length of the
walls
wall
is nearly 7,000 kilometers.
kilometers.
At one time, there were more
There
than
were
1
more than
million
1
guards
million guards on the wall
too.
too.
There were
There
hundreds
were
of signal
hundreds of
towers
signal
along
towers
the wall.
along the wall.
The guards
The
used
guards
these
used to
towers
this tower to communicate about the movement
enemies
of enemies
and to call for help when necessary.
necessary.
Now, much of the
Much
Great
of the
Wall has
Great
been
Wall has been
destroyed
destroyed
by wind and weather,
and
people
Two
often
people
take
often take
stones from the
stone
wall to
from the wall
repair
to
their
repair the
homes
home
and other
and
buildings.
other buildings.
In recent
In
years,
recent years,
the Chinese government has made laws to protect the walls.
wall.
People are no
People
longer
are no
allowed
longer
to take
allowed
stone
to
and
take
earth
stone
from the walls.
from the wall.
Some
Some
sections are
sections are well maintained,
so that
so
tourists
that
can
tourists
visit them.
can visit them.
These sections
These
are
sections
mainly
are
north of
mainly north of
Beijing
Beijing
or near
or
other
near
major
other major
tourist
tourist
centers.
centers.
Visitors can
Visitors
climb up
can
onto
climb
the
up onto
wall
the wall
and walk
and
along
walk
parts of
along
it,
parts of it,
but walking
but
can be
walking can be
difficult.
difficult.
The wind can
The
be
wind
strong,
can be strong,
and there are some
and there
hard
are some
slopes on it.
slopes on it.
Money from
Money
tourists
from
can be
tourists
used
can
to
be used
repair
to
the wall,
repair the wall.
but an
But
unfortunate result of the
result
tourist
of the
trade
tourist
is
trade
a great number
is
of
a great
businesses in
number
tourist areas.
tourist area.
There are cable
There were
cars,
cable
shops,
shops,
fast food
fast food
restaurants, and
restaurants,
crowded
and
parking
parking
areas.
areas.
Many people
Many
believe
people
that
believe
because
that
the
because
wall
the
is
wall
so
is so
long,
long,
it can be seen
can
from
be
the
seen
moon.
from the moon.
That isn't
That
true.
isn't true.
The widest
The
parts of
widest
the
parts of
wall
the wall
are
are only 9
meters,
meters,
and it is
and
mostly
it
the
is
same
mostly
color
the same
as the
color
earth
as
that
the
surrounds it.
earth surrounds it.
If you were ever
If
on
you're
the
ever
moon
on the moon
and you wanted to
and
see
you
the
want to
Great
see
Wall
the
of
Great Wall
China,
of China,
you would have to
you would
use a
have to use the
telescope.
telescope. The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from its enemies across the country's northern border. It is actually a series of long walls made of stone and earth. Some of the new parts are built of brick, Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago. Over the century, the Great Wall of China was built to defend China from its enemies across the country's northern border. It is actually a series of long walls made of stone and earth. Some of the newer parts are built of the brick. Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago. Over the century, new parts were built and some older parts were ruined and built again. The total length of the wall is necessarily 7,000 kilometers. At one time, there were more than 1 million guards on the wall, too. There were hundreds of signal towers along the wall. The guards used these towers to communicate about the movement of enemies and to call for help when necessary. Now, much of Great Wall has been destroyed by wind and weather, and people often take stone from the wall to repair their home and other buildings. In recent years, the Chinese government has made laws to protect the wall. People are no longer allowed to take stone and earth from the wall. Some sections are well maintained so that tourists can visit them. These sections are mainly northern of Beijing, or near other major tourist centers. Visitors can climb up onto the wall and walk along the parts of it, but walking can be difficult. The wind can be strong, and there were some hard slope on it. Money from tourists can be used to repair the wall, but an unfortunate result of the tourist trade is a great number of businesses in tourist areas. There are cable cars, shops, fast food restaurants, and crowded parking areas. Many people believe that because the wall is so long, it can be seen from the moon. That isn't true. The widest part of the wall are only 9 meters and it is mostly the same color as Earth that surrounds it. If you are ever on the moon and you wanted to see the Great Wall of China, you have to use a telescope. The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from its enemy across the country's northern border. It is actually a series of long walls made of stone and earth. Some of the newer parts are built of bricks. Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago over the centuries. Over the centuries, new parts were built and some older parts were ruined and built again. The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from its enemies across the country's northern border. It is actually a series of long walls made of stone and earth. Some of the newer parts are built of the bricks. Parts of it were first built more than 2,000 years ago. Over the centuries, new parts were built and some older parts were ruined and built again. The total length of the wall is nearly 7,000 kilometers. At one time, there were more than 1 million girls on the wall too. There were hundreds of signal towers along the wall. The guards used these towers to communicate about the movement of enemies and to call for help when necessary. Now, much of the Great Wall has been destroyed by wind and weather, and people often take stone from the wall to repair their homes and other buildings. In recent years, the Chinese government has made laws to protect the wall. People are no longer allowed to take stone and earth from the wall. Some sections are well maintained, so that tourists can visit them. These sections are mainly north of Beijing, or near other major tourist centers. Visitors can climb up onto the wall and walk around parts of it, but walking can be difficult. The wind can be strong and there was some hard slope on it. Money from tourists can be used to repair the wall, but an unfortunate result of its tourist trade is a great number of businesses in tourist areas. There were cable car, shops, fast food restaurants, and crowded parking areas. Many people believe that because the wall is so long, it can be seen from the moon. That isn't true. The widest part of the wall are only 9 meters, and it is mostly the same color as the earth that surrounded it. If you were ever on the moon, and you wanted to see the Great Wall of China, you'd have to use a telescope.